Okay, now we've got my congressman and now candidate for the U.S. Senate from California, Adam Schiff. Thanks so much for joining today.
It's great to be with you.
Kevin McCarthy has refused to seat you on the House Intelligence Committee. He said, quote, "The misuse of this panel during the 116th and 117th Congresses are severely undermined by its primary national security and oversight missions." Now, first of all, I'm not sure how that nebulous claim applies to you, but what's your response to McCarthy on the topic of taking you off of this committee?
Well, the reason he's taking me off the committee is because our investigations in the Intelligence Committee uncovered the fact that Donald Trump was withholding hundreds of millions of dollars from Ukraine, our ally, in order to try to extort Ukraine into helping him cheat in the election. He doesn't like that. Donald Trump doesn't like that. And to him, bowing to what Donald Trump wants is his reason for being. But it's a unprecedented move. No speaker has ever tried to decide who the minority party can have as the top Democrat on the Intelligence Committee. And I think his actions will undermine confidence in the committee. And that may result in the intelligence community, unwilling to share certain information if they think the committee is going to be abused that way.
Is there any recourse here? Like, given McCarthy's objections, is there any way to actually get onto this committee? Any appeal process for this?
There really isn't. It's a select committee. Unlike the standing committees in the House, the Speaker has the last word. But I think the voters in California will have an opportunity for redress. It adds additional, I think, powerful argument to our Senate campaign. Make Adam Schiff Kevin McCarthy's home state senator. I think for those who are as appalled as my colleagues with what McCarthy has done, there is an opportunity to find redress.
A big part of this is the tit for tat, because Democrats removed Marjorie Taylor Greene and Paul Gosar, both of whom had advocated for violence against Democrats. That was Nancy Pelosi and AOC, meaning that he's equating like Paul Gosar fantasizing about going online and AOC being killed with you impeaching Donald Trump. Can you speak on that false equivalency here?
Yes, and you're exactly right. This is a step by McCarthy to appease, the most extreme elements of his conference. There is no equivalence here. Marjorie Taylor Greene and Paul Gosar were removed from their committees with a bipartisan vote last session because they were encouraging violence against other members of Congress. And as someone on the receiving end of a lot of death threats over the last several years, I take my security seriously. My colleagues do, or they should. So they were removed for good reason and in a bipartisan way. There's nothing equivalent here.
Is there any way to find out what concessions Kevin McCarthy promised to the hostage takers on his side in exchange for their speaker votes? Is there any effort to do that right now?
I think a lot of it is, pretty much out in the open now. Restoring Marjorie Taylor Greene and Gosar to their committees and to important committees is part of the deal. But also, Marjorie Taylor Greene now is one of McCarthy's closest confidants. This was her price, that she wanted that kind of influence. He put a lot of those, right-wing rebels on the Rules Committee to decide the rules for the House. He is bound to their will when he is threatening to default on the nation's debt in order to cut Social Security and Medicare. So sadly, we see out in the open a lot of the results of that terrible bargain he struck, so that, his door would have the nameplate Speaker, but he will be the weakest Speaker the House has ever had.
Well, speaking of one of McCarthy's closest confidants, Marjorie Taylor Greene this past week peppered the Comptroller General with questions about critical race theory and drag queen story hour. Dodaro actually channeled the entire country by being as visibly confused as the rest of us. Do you think that this is the agenda that they're going to squander their majority with, faux outrage about critical race theory and drag queen story hour and M&Ms and on and on?
Yes, I think that's exactly what they're going to do. They're not interested in legislating. They're not interested in governing. They're only interested in tearing down and sensationalism. And so, sadly, people look at Marjorie Taylor Greene in the Republican conference and they're like, okay, this nobody of a congresswoman has now this big following, can raise a lot of money. Maybe that's where the power and glory is in the GOP. So she has many imitators. And this is what's brought, the kind of Tea Party movement to the present. This extreme element is now in the center of the Republican conference. And because they have no legislative agenda, because they have no ideas, because they have no interest in governing, you can expect a lot more circus-like tactics like you saw in that hearing.
Another beacon of integrity on the right is George Santos. Do you feel that he's able to effectively serve his constituents in this Congress?
No, absolutely not. He's a joke. And sadly, it was a joke that is going to have dire consequence for his constituents who were defrauded. But I will say this. We should see Santos for what he really is, and that is he is the living, walking, breathing embodiment of a Republican Party that 4 years ago, 6 years ago, with the election of Donald Trump, decided it had no interest in the truth anymore. Donald Trump lied in office thousands and thousands of times. And so what's more natural than to come out of that party than someone who is a complete fraud himself, like George Santos?
I've said before, Republicans aren't mad, in my opinion, that George Santos lied. They're mad because he makes it so easy for the rest of us to see exactly who that party is by putting somebody front and center who is so blatantly a liar, a thief, somebody willing to just completely compromise any shred of integrity. So with that said, let's move on to your U.S. Senate run. Why run? What are you trying to bring to the Senate?
Really, a couple things. The first is that our democracy is deeply at risk. It has been for several years. This extreme MAGA movement isn't over. Donald Trump is still the leader of that party. And after working on the impeachment, after being part of the January 6th committee and bringing out the evidence before the country as we did, I hope that it impressed upon the country just how fragile our democracy is. And I think a big part of the reason why we're so vulnerable as a democracy, and this gets to the second issue, which is really at the heart of my agenda, and that is the economy has not been working for millions of people who have worked harder than ever and seeing their quality of life slip away, see the future for their kids in doubt. And it's left all too many Americans receptive to a demagogue who comes along and says that he alone can fix it. And these two problems, the structural problem with our economy, we just saw Facebook and other companies lay off massive numbers of people while doing stock buybacks and dividends for shareholders. As long as the economy isn't working for millions of people, our democracy is at risk. And of course, it's just fundamentally unfair and unjust and bad economics. So those two issues, to me, are paramount and urgent. And the third that I've always been very outspoken on is our planet and climate. If we don't attack climate change with even greater urgency, then these other issues aren't going to matter in the long run. And I think we need someone in the Senate who will champion those issues, who's been at the center of these fights, and that's why I'm running for the Senate.
Is there any legislation that you would sponsor or introduce that's kind of like off the beaten path? That's not the usual stuff that we would expect, but is there some like pet project or some left of center thing that you would, be interested in introducing?
There are many things. Some are quite to be expected because I've been at the center of them, and others are probably a surprise to some of your listeners and viewers. I introduced and carried, and we passed in the House, the Protecting Our Democracy Act. That may be one of the most significant bills that I've carried. It's our whole package of our own post-Watergate reforms to strengthen the institutions of our democracy. It puts into law a lot of the norms that we thought were inviolate until Donald Trump violated each and every one of them. I've been working now for almost 20 years to double the size of the Santa Monica Mountains Recreation Area. We've gotten that passed in the House. We've gotten that passed in the Senate Resources Committee, but we need to start over now that we're in a new session and get it the final distance. I would say I've been working hard also to combat the scourge of homelessness with legislation that incentivizes more affordable housing. That is a deep priority of mine. I've been proud to bring back millions and millions of dollars to my district and look forward to doing far more for the entire state to address just how many people are homeless. These issues are interrelated. Because the economy is not working the way it should, almost half the people who are homeless in my hometown in our region in Los Angeles are working full time. And it's not enough to keep a roof over their head. And so these are my priorities and things I've been working on, but not always things that got the same attention as I was championing our democracy.
Katie Porter also announced her run for the U.S. Senate in the last couple of weeks. I think a lot of people would look at both of you, the two most prominent declared candidates, and feel like functionally there wouldn't be a huge difference. How would you differentiate yourself from her?
Well, we're rivals under the same flag, and I don't want to say anything negative about my colleague. I would say, with respect to my own record, that I've been at the center of every major fight to protect our democracy and to make sure we have an economy that works for everyone, doing the investigation of former President Trump's Russia misconduct, then doing the investigation of Ukraine misconduct, then leading the first impeachment trial, securing the first bipartisan vote to remove a president in U.S. history, then participating in the January 6th committee. So I've been at the very center of these fights. I think California is used to, the expectation that their senator is going to be a leader, not on the sidelines, but in the middle of the fight. But I've also been able to deliver for California, to bring back resources to attack the problems we have in California. And this is a big part of the reason why Speaker Pelosi today endorsed me under the assumption that Senator Feinstein doesn't run again. And 14 or 15 of my current California delegation members have also endorsed me. That's an extraordinary thing. Members generally hate to choose among their colleagues, but what they are choosing is someone with a proven track record of delivering for our state. And that's what I'll do.
Just to game this out a little bit, if this goes toward the end and it's you and Katie Porter, one of you will win and one of you will lose. Is there any strategy here to avoid losing both of you, like from Congress? Is that something that you've spoken about or would consider speaking about? And as a follow-up, is there even a way to, if it becomes clear that one is the clear favorite, that somebody could drop out and continue to actually run for Congress? Is that even possible?
That is certainly possible, but I think Californians shouldn't be surprised that in a state as big and as important, with as deep a bench that we have, that you're going to have multiple people running, multiple people that Californians like. I will say this, that I'm fortunate that I will be leaving a House seat that will remain in Democratic hands. The seat in Orange County is a very difficult seat, and there are concerns about that we could lose that seat. Now, I'm going to do everything humanly possible to help hold on to that seat, but that is another potential cost of one of my colleagues' candidacy.
Let's finish off with this. How can we help your campaign?
AdamSchiff.com. I'd love to have your viewers, your listeners, join our campaign. We have an incredible grassroots effort with the support of folks up and down the state. When we launched our campaign, we received support from every single county in California. So people can donate at AdamSchiff.com, or they can sign up to volunteer. And I would absolutely love to have their help.
Congressman Schiff, thank you so much for taking the time, and best of luck in the campaign trail.
Thank you. Wonderful to be with you.